right, let's dive right in. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has been ruled guilty on all 30 counts in the Boston bombing. Today, some of his victims reacted.
I was really surprised at how angry I was to see him, and how I was happy to see that he had some pain. I don't want to feel the anger that I think drove or drives people to do hateful things, so I want to put it behind me.
You know what they should do? They should just let those family members and those victims have their way with them. Just give them a bunch of hammers and staplers and go ahead and let loose. The jury has not yet ruled whether or not he's going to be given the death penalty or life in prison. So let's talk about the case a little bit. I'm joined tonight by RJ Manuelian. He's a criminal defense attorney. What's up, RJ?
How's it going, Kennedy?
Oh, real good then. I've also got Fred Burton tonight. He's a former State Department counterterrorism agent and vice president of intelligence at Stratfor. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Thank you, Kennedy.
All right, so Fred, I'm going to start with you because you said that this verdict is not going to have any deterrent effect on future terrorism plans or plots. So should Dzhokhar Tsarnaev be put to death? What do you think?
Well, as a former agent, it's hard to have a lot of sympathy for his cowardly acts. So I would venture to guess that I would lean towards the death penalty in this case. Having said that, I would not be surprised in the least, based upon his age, that the jury comes down and sentences him to life imprisonment versus the death penalty.
All right, we can only speculate at this point because the first phase of the trial is over. So, RJ, I want to talk about it because the jury found him guilty on all 30 counts. So we know where their mind is at in regards to the criminal acts. I mean, they think that he is guilty of sin. If you are that defense attorney, how do you turn that jury around? What do you do to stand in between Dzhokhar and death?
I think you got to use sort of a reverse psychology and tell the jurors that that is exactly what Tsarnaev wants, to be killed. And by giving the death penalty, you're giving him exactly what he wants, martyrdom. By saying that, you're probably going to reach to one, if not two jurors. And by doing that, you're hanging the jury. Remember, Kennedy, they need a unanimous verdict. So if you're able to convince one or two jurors that you're giving him exactly what he wants, then perhaps they might reject the death penalty.
All right, so Fred, say that's successful. And I think that's actually a very good argument. I think you could say that you turn this guy into a martyr just like his brother, and that's what he wants. That's what they wanted all along. Is there any way that life in prison is satisfying enough for these victims and the family members who lost their loved ones?
Well, that's a hard call. Having been involved in countless investigations of terrorist attacks around the globe, we have been very successful in prosecuting World Trade Center suspects here. The state of Virginia prosecuted the CIA shooter, Mir Amal-Khanzi, and gave him the death penalty. So in essence, I think that those are the kinds of factors that you would have to ask the victims. But if he becomes a ward of the Bureau of Prisons, I guarantee you he'll spend the rest of his life in the Supermax with a whole range of other terrorists that have come before him.
Oh, great. A little coffee clatch where they can braid each other's beards. That's great. So, RJ, walk us through it. What's the difference between the first phase of the trial and the death penalty phase? What are the shifts for the prosecutors and the defense attorneys?
Okay, well, with the defense, they have to show by a preponderance of the evidence. They have the burden of showing any mitigating factors. When a jury decides whether or not it's going to be death or not, they have to weigh the pros and the cons. In law, we call it mitigating and aggravating factors. So the burden is on the defense to show any mitigating. Mitigating would be he came from supposedly a bad area in the Soviet Union. There was ethnic strife and conflict. He came back from a really bad background. And then the burden shifts to the prosecution to show the aggravating. Aggravating meaning all the things that he did bad, substantial planning, substantial premeditation, multiple victims, and so forth. And then basically what the jury's going to do is weigh the totality of all that and decide whether or not unanimously he deserves death.
All right, Fred, I want to ask you a question. What has this case revealed about security in our big cities, and has it made us any safer?
It really hasn't. And in essence, the notoriety surrounding this case may actually inspire additional copycat attacks, or you may have some budding jihadis on the fence looking to do something as a result of this. But if you look at the sheer burden that's been pushed on local police around the country, as a result of Boston, which clearly has been a game changer in special event management. It costs a tremendous amount of money now to defend these soft targets. And in essence, there's too many soft targets and not enough cops or security measures to protect them all.
Yeah, one of the women in New York was investigating how to use pressure cooker bombs in addition to car bombs and fertilizer bombs. So, you know, it's certainly on people's radar. So, RJ, I'm going to ask you the last question. Objectively, looking at this, how do you think it's going to go? Not how do you want it to go, but how do you think it's going to go based on what you've seen from the jury, the 30 guilty verdicts today? Is he going to get death?
I'll tell you what the wild card is, Kennedy. The wild card is the defense attorney, Judy Clark, who saved Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber who saved Susan Smith, who drowned her children in her car. She's done magic before, so if anybody could do it, it is her. So I'm going to give Tsarnaev a 50-50 shot tomorrow, which is pretty good odds.
Right, really coming down hard on one side or the other. RJ and Fred, thank you guys so much for the analysis and coming by. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed.